Museums, the place art and history reside in to be respected, feared by many, or go to die. I remember during my high school's grade 9 arts trip, we visited the Royal Ontario Museum, or ROM, in the Art Gallery of Ontario, and I still have all those photos from that trip in my little Sony Cybershot. Somewhere. Oh, by the way, hi, I'm Alexa, resident ookie spooky girly, and someone who wishes she had more time to casually peruse museums. Question for you. Do you have a favorite museum? Stay tuned until the end of today's video for a special edition of comment section shoutouts, and welcome to the top 5 ancient artifacts and museums historians fear. Alrighty, what are we starting off with today? Oh, none other than the infamous Robert doll. Okay, maybe he isn't ancient compared to a lot of the other artifacts I'll be talking about today, but he makes up for it in the terrifying category. For starters, the doll only looks vaguely human. His nub of a nose looks like a pair of pinholes, and he's covered in like little brown marks, kinda like scars. His eyes are beady and black, and combined with his malevolent smirk, he's terrifying to look at. And that's coming from somebody who loves creepy dolls. Clasped in his lap, he's holding his own toy, a doll with disproportionately positioned eyes and a too big tongue falling out of its mouth. Now, this doll originally belonged to Robert Eugene Otto, an artist described as eccentric, which, most artists are, but I promise, I'll elaborate. Neighbors of Robert used to hear him having a conversation with the doll, and this continued into his adult years. Okay, that's not too weird. He brought it everywhere and talked about it in the first person as if it weren't a doll. That might sound kinda batty, but yeah, it's the best way to deal with cursed objects. Trust me, I'm talking from experience. The doll remained stored in the Otto family home until Robert died in 1974. Now, after his death, a couple bought the house, and their young daughter found the doll in the attic. The girl often claimed that the doll was trying to enter. Go figure. If it was hidden away, probably for a reason. The doll is now on display in a museum in Key West and is still believed to curse people. His last caretaker before the museum experienced him disappear and reappear as he pleased, along with hearing footsteps and giggling in the attic. Some claimed the doll's expression changed when anybody badmouthed his owner in his presence. He's also been responsible for, a couple of car crashes, some divorces, broken bones. Okay, good Robert, please. I don't need to be cursed. Let's move on, shall we? Next up, we have the Dybbuk Box, or Dybbuk Box. Depending on who you ask, the pronunciations are different all over the interwebs. Nevertheless, in Jewish folklore, this is an evil spirit. Supposedly, a Holocaust survivor accidentally summoned the demon while using a homemade Ouija board, but managed to trap it inside the wine cabinet. Okie dokie, let's just unpack that for a second. Somebody summoned something evil with a Ouija board, sealed it in something else, and people keep trying to awaken it? Let sleeping demons lie, for crying out loud. It's a new year. Let's just not bring anything crazy into it. Kevin Mannis bought the box at an estate sale in 2001 and immediately started having nightmares about an evil hag. Ditto for anybody who stayed with him. Now, he gave the box to his mother, who suffered a stroke on the same day. By the way, this story was the inspiration for the 2012 horror film, The Possession. Probably heard about it. The box's later owners have also claimed that, that creature appeared in their nightmares as well. The last owner was Jason Haxton, director of the Museum of Osteopathic Medicine, who not only had nightmares but developed a strange skin disease and began coughing up red fluids, if you get what I mean. Now, at that point, he contacted his local rabbis, sealed the creature back in the box, and gave the cabinet to Zach Baggins. You've probably heard of him? Ghost Adventures? Yeah, that went in his museum. By the way, most recently in 2018, Post Malone fans claimed his series of bad luck was caused by his contact with the cabinet. Look, don't look at me, I believe in omens. Let those things be, let them be. Alrighty, so that brings us to the midway point on today's list, James Dean's car. You know James Dean, right? I hope so. This man freaking loved his 1955 Porsche Spider, having had it extensively customized, and he affectionately called it, yeah, you've guessed it, a little. Now, apparently the car was so transparently evil that Sir Alec Guinness, when meeting Dean for lunch, claimed, if you get in that, you're gonna be found dead in it by this time next week. Now, James Dean laughed it off. He was like, whatever. He went off to go prepare his car for the Salina sports car races with his Porsche mechanic, Rolf Weatherich. Enlisting stuntman Bill Hickman to help out, their original plan was to tow, let's call it Little B, to the races, but Rolf felt it would be better to Dean to get used to the vehicle and run the engine in. I'm not the expert here. On that fateful Friday, Rolf sat next to Dean, while Hickman followed with his truck and trailer. Police pulled over the convoy and issued a pair of speeding tickets just outside Bakersfield, but that didn't slow anybody down. Please, this car was meant to go fast. Alright, so we're barreling down Route 466 at an estimated 85 miles per hour when a young student named Donald Turnipseed, driving a Ford two-door, decided to make a sudden turn onto Route 41. Now, the impact sent the Ford almost 40 feet down the road and ejected Rolf from the Porsche. James Dean was pronounced dead on arrival at the Paso Robles War Memorial Hospital at 6:20 p.m. But of course, it wouldn't be a curse if it stopped there. When the mechanics tried to repair the wrecked car, it fell on one of them, crushing both his legs. Dr. William S. Ridge bought the Porsche from a salvage yard in Burbank and proceeded to strip it for parts. He installed the engine into his Lotus race car, then loaned the transmission and suspension parts to fellow doctor and racer Troy McHenry. Now, our good doctor crashed the Lotus at the 1956 Pomona sports car races, surviving, but McHenry, not so lucky. He hit a tree in the same race. That was the end of him, and that's where the curse gains its strength. Two thieves who tried to take pieces of the car were both injured. Yep, the curse doesn't stop here. Shortly after those crashes, publicity monger and self-proclaimed King of Customs, George Barris, bought the Spider, promising to rebuild it. When the mangled frame was found to be beyond recovery, he chose to capitalize on the car's notoriety. The Porsche was loaned to the Los Angeles chapter of the National Safety Council, and from 1957 to 59, it went on a gruesome tour of car shows, movie theaters, and bowling alleys. In March of 1959, while in storage in Fresno, the car caught fire. No idea. Just poof. It suffered remarkably little damage, just 2 melted tires, some singed paint, and fortunately the fire didn't spread to the other vehicles in storage. Now meanwhile, Barris, yeah we all remember him, had sold a pair of tires from the 550 and both reportedly blew at the same time, causing the new owner to, skid off the road. Little B even managed to crush and kill a truck driver who was transporting it. The car has since disappeared into a museum archive, which is probably for the best. I'm nervous enough around regular cars, but the thought of this cursed monstrosity is making me extra jittery. Or that's maybe from the monster I had earlier. But still, as somebody who drives on the 401 on a regular basis, no thank you. Next up, folks, we've got the unlucky mummy. Granted, I don't think I've ever met a lucky mummy, but make of that what you will. So even though technically speaking, an iceberg and poor building plans caused the end of the Titanic, what if there were supernatural forces at play that pushed the fate of the ship along? Enter, you guessed it, the unlucky mummy. It was donated to the British Museum in July of 1889 by Mrs. Warwick Hunt of Holland Park, London, on behalf of Mr. Arthur F. Wheeler. It was displayed in the first Egyptian room of the museum from the 1890s and has remained on public view ever since, with the exception of periods during the First and Second World Wars, when it was removed from its case for safety. It has left the museum on a number of occasions when it formed part of a temporary exhibition held at 2 venues in Australia, and between February 4th to May 27th of 2007, along with a bunch of other pieces, the unlucky mummy was exhibited at Taiwan's National Palace Museum during a press conference. The mummy to which the article belonged is said to have been left in Egypt, since it never formed part of the collections of the British Museum. The mummy board is currently displayed in room 62. The name unlucky mummy is misleading, as the artifact isn't really a mummy at all. I promise I'm getting to it, but it's a painted wooden mummy board. So it's kind of like the inner coffin lid. It was found at Thebes and can be dated by its shape and the style of its decoration to the late 21st or early 22nd dynasty. In the British Museum, it is known by its serial number EA22542. The beardless face and the position of the hands with the fingers extended show that it was made to cover the mummified body of a woman. Her identity isn't known due to the brief hieroglyphic inscriptions containing only short religious phrases and omitting mention of the name of the deceased. The high quality of the lid indicates that the owner was a person of high rank. It was unusual for such ladies to participate in the musical accompaniments to the rituals in the temple of Amun-Ra. Hence, early British Museum publications described the owner of 22542 as a priestess of Amun-Ra. E. Wallace Budge, keeper of Egyptian and Assyrian antiquities from 1894 to 1924, also suggested that she might have been of royal descent. But we're not quite sure. I'm not a history expert, folks, for a lot of reasons. And finally, we have the one chair you might not want to sit in. Or don't take my advice and see for yourself. Popularly known as Busby's Stoop chair, this wooden furniture is cursed by the spirit of Thomas Busby, who was known to ruthlessly, kill people. Thomas was arrested, tried, and condemned to death after he killed his father-in-law, Daniel Oddie, in 1702. Oddie and Busby were running a coin counterfeiting business, as well as other criminal enterprises, and they argued about the business, which ended with me ending you, Before getting hanged for his crimes, he requested to have a meal in his favorite local pub. And upon finishing his meal, he stood and said, "May sudden death come to anyone who dares sit on my chair." And ever since then, 63 people who dared to sit on the chair met untimely and terrifying deaths. I'm sorry, someone out there waited until the death toll got to 63 before deciding, maybe there's something wrong. I feel like I would have noticed the common Lincoln deaths by, 20 weird deaths or so, at least. Specifically, locals claim that during the Second World War, Canadian airmen from the nearby base at Skipton-on-Swale went to the pub, and those who sat in the chair never returned from missions over mainland Europe. As recent as the 1970s, some fatal accidents were linked with the chair. Busby was, ended at Sand Hutton Crossroads, beside an inn, which later had its name changed to the Busby Stoop Inn. The site of the execution, opposite the pub on the A61 and A167 crossroads, which are apparently now a roundabout, was said to be haunted by his ghost. Later, the owner of the pub donated the chair to the Thirsk Museum in the United Kingdom, and it's still there, but it's hung up above the ground to prevent any further deaths. Granted, it's only about like 1.5 meters above the ground, which I don't think that's high enough. Stupid people will still find a way. May I recommend a healthy 3 feet, or put it in a box, or even better, put it away forever. And that brings us to the end of our list, which means it's time to dive into some special comments from watchers. From the video, Mysterious UFO Sighting Scientists Cannot Explain, user Danny Eilish 2131 said, "You made my days so much better. I love your satire and style. Excellent." And to that I say, thank you so much, Danny. I really appreciate it. I have fun dressing up. From the same video, user Kenesinani3629 said, "Respect for your hard work. We love those mysteries." Aw, heck. I'm also a big mystery and unknown lover, which is why I love being able to share my knowledge with all of y'all every day. And finally, John Clark 1612 said, "Why would you expect scientists to explain something? You'd be better off asking the insane asylum to get better answers." Well, John, I'm not gonna say that the sentiment is incorrect, but a gal can dream, right? I'm dreaming in Technicolor over here. Alright folks, that brings us to the end of our time, so if you enjoyed my ramblings today, could you help us out by giving this video a like, subscribing if you aren't already, hit the bell for more cursed museum content from us here at Top 5 Scary Videos, and I'll see y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.